And joining me now, my first guest is the former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, Omar Abdullah, joins us. Omar Abdullah, we are once again seeing terror attacks taking place that have, in a way, once again shown that Pak-based terror, the machine is still there. What, according to you, is the way forward? This, every time we think that the terror machine has been conquered, it rears its ugly face again.
I don't know why you've been led to believe that the terror machine has been conquered. It hasn't. Attacks in Jammu and Kashmir, whether directed against the security forces or directed against minority populations or even members of the majority population in J&K, have continued all through. It's only the propaganda of the central government, ably assisted by the same propaganda machinery in Jammu and Kashmir, that has tried to sell you a different story. Otherwise, please tell me, what period of time has there been since 2019 when you haven't seen attacks of this nature? In fact, I'll go further and say that even those areas which prior to 2017-18 had been cleared of militancy, and I'm particularly referring to the hill areas of Jammu, Rajouri, Poonch area, you've seen fairly serious militant engagement in those areas as well. So this terror machinery hadn't been conquered. This was simply propaganda that had been sold to you that 370 was the root cause of terror, and if 370 was eradicated, terror would go away. It's not going to happen. But 370 was not the cause of terror, and what they did on the 5th August,
But the fact, Omar Abdullah, I'm just looking at numbers. The Jammu and Kashmir Director General of Police, DGP Dilbagh Singh, says in April 2023, number of militants now are at an all-time low in Jammu and Kashmir in recent years. They give figures about terror attacks before Article 370 abrogation was 763. That came down in the last couple of years to 519. They're not over, but according to the government, they've come substantially down. They're in a better position today than they were a couple of years ago. The fact is, as I said, the terror machine has never been fully conquered.
Please, Rajdeep, one sec. No, exactly, but every year you've had numbers come down. When I was Chief Minister, I distinctly remember that every year the number of militant attacks or terror attacks during the 6 years that I was Chief Minister showed a declining trend. I'm sure the same is true for the year or so, or a couple of years that the PDP and the BJP were together in Jammu and Kashmir. This declining trend of militancy is not a product of Article 370's removal. It has been a continuous feature of Jammu and Kashmir for the last, I would hazard, 15-20 years. So this selective use of data by the DGP to explain a miraculous improvement in the situation is simply that. It's fudging numbers. Now, the fact that you lost 3 senior uniformed personnel in the attack or in the encounter yesterday in Kokernag, a colonel. Do you remember when the last time was that we lost a colonel of the Indian Army in a militant encounter? I think it was easily about 3 or 4 years ago, along with a major and a DYSP of the police in the same encounter. I don't remember an encounter in which we lost such senior personnel in one particular incident. So things, if anything, are showing a worsening trend, not an improving trend. Yes, the number of incidents may be less, but the severity of the incidents are more. No, you had an incident in Rajouri a few months ago in which an army truck was attacked, and you lost, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 7 personnel.
But you see, Omar Abdullah, while the statistics will be questioned by both sides, saying whether terrorism has been brought under control, what is clear is that there is a huge problem still from across the border. Pakistan still sends its terrorists from across the border. My question to you, what if you were there today, what would you do differently? Let's be clear, there is now an administration in Jammu and Kashmir which is very closely linked with the center. I want to know, if you were in charge, what would you do differently, given the fact that this terror machine has existed and done high-profile targets when you were in power, when your father was in power, when Mufti Saab was in power, and now even after the abrogation of Article 370?
Well, the one thing I do differently is I wouldn't sell you a dream. I wouldn't sell you lies. I wouldn't tell you that the situation is improving by showing you a G20 or a Miss World or a Miss Universe or whoever it was who came and met the Lieutenant Governor. I wouldn't sell you lies in the form of tourist numbers and tell you everything is great when I know for a fact it isn't. I would acknowledge that we have a problem on the ground and a problem that needs to be solved. That there is obviously, there are gaps in our counter-terror or our counter-militancy grid that allowed for something like this to happen. That there are gaps on the line of control that is allowing for these people to cross, that they're still able to get weapons and arms and ammunition across. That, I mean, the fact that this government has continuously sold you a dream that there has been a miraculous improvement in the situation is the first thing they need to step away from.
The improvement, they say, look at the numbers of tourists tourism numbers in Jammu and Kashmir. They are bringing in investments, they say, into Jammu and Kashmir. And therefore, they say this is a gradual process. It's not going to happen overnight. Yes, there are terrible attacks like the one that happened yesterday, both in Anantnag and Rajouri. But you've got to be a little bit more patient.
So then they're happy to accept these sort of attacks, and life will go on. They'll still sell us propaganda. If that's the way they want it, then that's fine. But then they should remember that situations like this have existed in the past. No, Rajdeep, they can't blame parties like mine for a situation that existed before 2018 and now suddenly turn around and say, well, these things happen and it's all right. The situation will improve gradually. No lesser person than the Home Minister of India held my party and another regional party responsible for, I think he said, 40,000 deaths. Now, if we were responsible for those deaths, in which sadly my own political party members, my family members, friends and others are included in that statistic that was used, then who is responsible for the deaths today? Because if Pakistan is responsible for those that are being killed in the attacks today, was Pakistan not responsible for those that were killed when we were in office? How is it possible that I am responsible or my party is responsible for the deaths that took place when we were in office, yet suddenly only Pakistan is responsible for the deaths that take place now? You can't play with numbers when it suits you. I mean, Pakistan needs to come on board. Pakistan needs to accept that we have concerns with the way in which terror is exported from there. I've always said that dialogue is the way forward, but for dialogue to start, a suitable situation and a conducive environment has to be built for that dialogue, and the onus for that does not lie with India. The onus to create an environment for that dialogue lies more with Pakistan, because they haven't done enough to address our concerns. So time and again we keep saying that Pakistan needs to address the concerns that India has with regard to violence in Jammu and Kashmir, with regard to the way in which these attacks take place. They need to create an environment that is conducive for people like us to be able to push for a dialogue.
You know, because your father and your National Conference leader and MP Farooq Abdullah has been quoted as saying today only India-Pakistan talks can resolve the Kashmir issue, that militancy has not ended, while the government says militancy is now over. Peace cannot be achieved through a fight. It can come only through talks. Now, it's all very well to say peace can come only through talks, but there have been attempts over the last 20, 25 years with Pakistan. None of them have worked. Therefore, there's a sense of anger, fatigue. You will appreciate the anger that exists in Kashmir Valley, in India, the manner in which these, Pakistan continues to send terrorists across the border. What do you talk with when the country continues to export terror?
Which is why, if you remember what I said not more than 2 minutes ago, Pakistan needs to take adequate steps to create an environment conducive for dialogue. I'm the first person who will tell you today that these sort of attacks do not help the process of dialogue. A dialogue is not possible in an environment like this. I'm not living in a fool's paradise wherein that we will continue to see attacks like this and somehow miraculously a dialogue will take place. But please also see that the heavy-handed use of force, particularly, let's say, in the aftermath of Pulwama, wherein we went across and destroyed, or at least we said we destroyed terror camps and killed a certain number of terrorists across the line of control. That was supposed to have had an immediate impact on ending attacks like this, but it hasn't happened either. So you tell me, dialogue hasn't worked, cross-LOC surgical strikes haven't worked, the heavy hand hasn't worked, governor's rule in Jammu and Kashmir clearly hasn't worked either. So please tell me, then what is working?
You know, in a way, therefore, going to give you a final word from you. Do you believe, therefore, that this is an opportunity for the government opposition to speak in one voice? These are brave hearts of the country, Jammu and Kashmir police, Indian army, all suffering as a result. Can we see, at least forget about a dialogue with Pakistan, a dialogue within this country to ensure that you all have a common approach to tackling terror?
Rajdeep, the onus for a dialogue like that rests only with the government. We can't initiate a dialogue like that. And hardly a few hours ago, you had the Prime Minister attacking the opposition bloc, the India bloc, in the strongest possible terms. So while I would like to say yes, we would like to work with the government of India to ensure that a situation like this doesn't continue, the onus to have a dialogue like that, to bring the opposition on board, to have us talking in one voice. I mean, today, sadly, condemnation of this attack has been stronger from opposition parties than it has from the government. The government hasn't been as critical of what has happened in Jammu and Kashmir as the opposition parties have been. I think that is tragic as well.
Okay, let me leave it there, Omar Abdullah. You've made your point, you've made it strongly, and I hope that someone is listening, and you need a dialogue at the end of the day, at least within this country, to ensure complete consensus on how we fight this terror machine. Thank you very much for joining me here at the top of the news today. Omar Abdullah, the former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir.